thank you again, both Nelson, Karen, Anna, and my wife Jennifer for having me present today. Always good to come back to the Atlanta community and present at ATUG. Really, I have a long history with it, which I'll give you a little brief overview. But first, a little bit about me. I started Tableau using Tableau in 2009. Was introduced to Tableau by a future Zen master, Dan Murray, and just absolutely became to love it just fine. So, um, in addition to that, in 2009 was also part of the very first Atlanta Tableau users group. These are just some pictures of me and my wife Jen, my daughter Emma, and Nathan, taken a while back before COVID, obviously, and while we were at Disney World. This is me at one of my many. I think I have attended. I can't remember if it's 11 or 12 consecutive Tableau conferences. Always learn something new, even as a Tableau employee. Now I'm always learning about Tableau and learning really the use cases that customers share with me, and it's always a pleasure to go to those conferences. So I would encourage you, if you haven't been even to the virtual one, those are put on very obviously it's not like meeting people in person, but it's the next best thing. Um, this is really where the community, the Atlanta Tableau Users Group, has come. We started back in, I want to say, October, November 2009. There were 32 of us, and right there you can see a little bit thinner version of Paul. But there were 32 of us that started that, and it has really swelled. We celebrated our 10th anniversary, about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And that's kind of a picture, not even a full picture of everybody was there, but it has really swelled. And I can't say enough of both to the current leaders and the leaders that preceded us, just what a great job they've done with the Atlanta Tableau Users Group. And I would encourage you, if you're not a member, if you're not subscribing to the emails, do so. You want to be here every month to find out what new is going on, and really, hopefully, as we head into the fall, maybe we'll even be able to get out of the virtual and um, into meeting face to face, which would be great. So today, I'm going to talk a little bit about map layers, which I absolutely love. It was introduced with Tableau 2020.4. If you don't have it, download it and play around with it, because it really has opened up a lot of functionality with mapping, which of course Tableau does so easily out of the box, right out of the gate. But there was an issue, and that is, if you had different levels of granularity, and you wanted to map them, say both on the county and the zip code level, then you had to do a little bit of either a dual axis, or you had to play around with perhaps something like Mapbox, or create a customized map to show those different levels of granularity. And that's what I'm going to show you today. It's really based on a simple premise, and this was an actual use case, and that was to identify locations for future manufacturing sites or distribution sites, where our customers are, but our competitors are not. And that became known as Project Whitespace for an organization I was working with prior to joining to Tableau. And you can see, just so that I'm not blowing smoke, I actually went in and looked at Salesforce, because I can remember being a part of a small part of this case, where we were basically, it says, combine geographic information from two files. Well, that sounded easy enough. However, when I tried it way back in 2016, we ended up having to use Mapbox to create the mapping layers. We couldn't really perform what we wanted to do in Tableau. And that's what I'm going to show you how map layers now, with the introduction of map layers in 2020.4, has really helped. So with that, I always love to present in Tableau. We were talking a little bit about that before we started today, rather than PowerPoint, so that you can see that, exactly what we're doing. And I'm going to start with a very easy premise. This is U.S. Industries. This is the company that you can say that we're running, and we have two distribution facilities. We have one out here in Beaumont, Texas, and down here in Victoria, Texas. And once again, this is real easy to do with Tableau. No matter what version you're on, and it's just geocoded down to the city. So I know that we have a plant here in Victoria, have a plant here in Beaumont, and I just pulled in, created a little data set that showed those two facilities. Well, our aspirations are to grow in Texas. Actually, our aspirations are to grow beyond Texas, but we're going to use Texas as the example. And I know where my competitors are as well. And my competitors happens to be THM Corp. And so here I am, or here we are in Beaumont and Victoria, and my competitors are in blue. Once again, this is geocoded down to really the city level. And so there's just one distribution facility within each city. Now you can see here that probably when I was choosing locations, or as we were choosing locations for our distribution facility, we're kind of in the extreme southeast portion of Texas. And although sales are going pretty well, we're not really positioned to push up into Amarillo or even out in the extreme southwest part of Texas. So how can we analyze this, and what can we do to see how we can visualize this, so that if we need to create a plant, we need to add additional production capabilities, how do we do that? And this was a real use case, like I said, all the way back in 2018. So you kind of see I gave them names: US Industries and THM. And really, this is a classic case of us versus them, US Industries versus THM. So with that, I'm going to pull in, once again, something that an organization would have, which is there are sales. What are the sales for U.S. Industries? Because I want to see that in relationship to this map. And so all I'm going to do is take postal code, and I'm going to drag it in. And when I drag it in with anything greater than 2020.4, you're going to see this something called an ATA marks layer. And so I drop that in, and lo and behold, I now have what really is, if I were to do this with a dual axis map, I have now locations here of every zip code. And you can see now I have two cards here within the marks card, and one is for zip code, the other one is for my original state. So now I can utilize this just as if I had a dual axis. If I have my sales, I can pull my sales in here to size. It's going to size those bubbles, and I can do the same thing that I've always done. I'm going to kind of make it a little bit big because it's monetary. I can kind of show now my sales out here at 79907 is about $13,000, and I might even want to take the color and diminish the color a little bit, and then put a border on it. Just everything that we would normally have done, um, with a bubble map of this type. The only problem now is that, for instance, here in San Antonio, my bubble covers the distribution facility of one of my competitors. Well, no worries. I can take this and I can drag it so that my distribution facilities show first. So now I have my my competitors, myself and my competitors on top of the layer, and I have my bubbles underneath showing the showing my sales. So that's one portion of it, but I want to add even more granularity to this. And when I was working on this, I think I was set to introduce this earlier in the year. I came across kind of it was kind of exciting, but a little disturbing at the same time. A McKinsey article that came out February 3rd, 2021, which was talking about harnessing the power of external data. And this article, I think it's 7 or 8 pages, and you can download it. Just search "harnessing the power of external data." But what it goes on to talk about is that comparatively few have realized the full potential of linking internal data with data that is provided by third parties, such as US Census, perhaps weather data. And this kind of shook me to my core because, and I'll ask Nelson, how long have you been connecting to external data? I know you did something several years ago where you were connecting to weather data, which caused me to want to connect to weather data. But we've been doing this for what, close to a decade, right?
Yeah, honestly, Paul, it's an interesting question because you make me reflect. The very, very first thing I ever did in data visualization, even before I got into Tableau, I was doing some stuff in Google Earth, and I had a little Java stuff that was popping up in the little tooltip thing, and it was like live video, and those were like URLs that had like little embeds to live video, and that was like for a public service and so forth. And so yeah, your question's a great one because it makes me go back to some really interesting use cases for grabbing external data. And in that case, that was like video and pictures and stuff like that, but it's still external because it wasn't something that we were hosting ourselves. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
really good question.
So the best, and the best thing about a lot of this external data is that if it's provided by the government, typically it's free. And even with the non-free data, I know with the weather data that I was connecting to, it was fractions of a penny for every data point that you wanted for a specific location. So it was very, very reasonable. And so I say that to say that Tableau has had this ability to do this for more than a decade. However, we're going to play around with it just a little bit. So here on my back, I'm back at my mat with both where my locations are, where my sales are, where my competitors are. Well, next, I want to take some of that external data, and I want to pull it into my visualization. Now, keep in mind the sales is by postal code, but this I'm going to pull in by county. And so I'm just going to take county here in my marketing stats, and I'm going to pull that once again into layers. And once again, I'm going to get a dot for every county within Texas. Now, there is an interesting phenomena, and I'm going to ask, and nobody knew I was going to do this. So I guess, does everybody have, I guess they have access to either the chat or the Q&A. Is that right, Jen?
That's right.
Everybody, okay. So I'm going to ask, and for the first right question, I'm going to award $50 gift certificate to Tableau Swag Store. Why am I getting 101 and by the way, Nelson, you're not eligible, so it has to be a non-Tableau leader. Why am I getting 101 unknown geographic locations when I pull county in to Texas? And Jen, have we had any answers yet?
We have a few.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some answers in the chat.
Let's just see.
I think Jesse has the right one.
Jesse, can we make sure? Let's see. I'm see my other screen is too small.
those counties also exist in other states.
That is exactly right. Jesse Rader. Is that right? I hope we're
Mm-hmm.
pronouncing your name right. That is, you are dead on correct. So there's a number of ways that you can counter this, obviously, but you're exactly right. I can go in and just click on that 101 unknown, click on edit locations. You can see, hey, wait a minute, the matching location is ambiguous. And when you look at Brown County, how many Brown counties are there in the US? Probably each state has a Brown or a Calhoun County. And so all I have to do is say, well, what do I want to use? And I can use this from the state field. And so now it says, okay, I know that you're Brown County from Texas, and I can associate the county correctly. So that's exactly right. Be looking for an email directly from me for your Tableau swag. So there's a couple things here I want to do. Once again, I've got here in the marks card, I'm going to change this to a field map. Okay. I then want to take median household income and pull it into color. Want to change the colors a little bit. I'm going to just make this kind of the traditional hot and cold, reverse here, apply, go, and maybe drown the color a little bit so it's not quite um, so overbearing. And so now I see, Loving Texas, that's a pretty good size. That's an $80,000 of median household income up here in the extreme Hartley, Texas, I can see. So once again, I have both city data, postal data, and now I have county data on here. And once again, I want these marks, this particular mark, to kind of live behind everything, so I can still hover over my facilities, my competitors, my sales, and now I have where I can target locations. Now you can see I'm actually doing pretty well, because down here in Victoria, already have access to these counties. It's really up here in the extreme northern portion and the north, more of the western counties, that I don't have access to, because I've got distribution facilities way out here in the southeast. And this, once again, was a real use case that we really didn't have a good answer for, other than we had to build each one of these layers in Mapbox, and now you can do it right out of the gate using map layers. But there's one additional thing that I want to show, and this has to do with some of our buffer calculations, and it's the ability to and we always had this ability, but you had to write some pretty complicated code and calculations to accomplish this. But now we've made it possible to allow you to look at ranges and with these buffer calculations. So let me show you the buffer calculation here first. And basically, it's going to use some lat long, and I get to, using a parameter, I get to dynamically say, well, all right, out of the new cities that I'm considering locating an additional facility, how many miles, what's the radius that I want to use to design a plot to put a mark on my map. And this is an extremely easy. All you're doing is a make point, and then you're enclosing it in a buffer calculation, and all you need is a lat long for where you're looking. So now I'm actually going to have marks based on city, zip code, um, county, and now down to really the most granular, which is latitude and longitude. And then you can see here, I'm just going to take this geometry calculation, and once again, I'm going to drop it right into the marks layer. And these are the sites that I am considering locating. And the beauty of this is, because I used a parameter, I can change the buffer size from 20 miles to 40 miles. I think I've got it going up to 100 miles. But I can automatically adjust this with just that one calculation, and combine that with a buffers with a parameter, I'm able to dynamically change this. Now, there was and is still a problem with this, because when I see something like this, I don't know. I guess I could look over here and say, oh, I'm at 40 miles. But I wanted to originally take my buffer size parameter and pull it into my label, and son of a gun, it just does not work. And I haven't gotten with the Tableau dev team to make sure if that is something by design, that they decided not to allow you just to drop that really it's just a numeric version of the buffer size in. But I got to thinking about it for just a second. I go, well, I know I can drop other things in. I can drop a calculated field. So all I did was create a calculation based on my parameter. And now I can pull him in to label, which once again, this is the 40 miles here is being dropped right in the center of all these. So how would I get 40 miles on each of my circles? And the way that I do that is I can just take state, put it here into, drag it into detail, and now I have each one of these. I can go in here and change my label so be a little bit more readable to say in miles, and click apply and click OK. And so now I can take and size these, and I can understand exactly what that radius is as I drag it out. So that is really a very simple but powerful, compelling use case that actually I ran up against in 2018. It has been solved. No longer do you need to create, customized layers underneath to put all this. You have all of this at your fingertip, and you can then judge, in this case, where would be the best place to add a new distribution facility. So with that, I guess we can take maybe a couple of Q&A. If not,
we've
go ahead.
got one for you, Paul.
Okie dokie. Let's
okay,
hear them.
So we got Chris has asked if there's any integration between Tableau and Arcgis.
I believe there is. Nelson, I have not done that personally. Have you come across
Yes,
a direct?
Yeah, it's a great question. A couple different things you can say there. There are, when you think about ArcGIS, a lot of times that materializes itself in shapefiles. And so shapefile is kind of that spatial file that Paul's got right there. So, if you have that kind of dot SPH or whatever it is file.
There we go. So
right there. And then the
so
server is the other one that is really valuable, is being able to connect to those sources that are on the server. So yeah.
Excellent question. But there's Esri ArcGIS right there, so it does connect. I've not personally done that, and to be honest, I think we have now native maybe 80 connectors right out of the box, and of course there are all types of other connectors that are out there. So if you can get it into a shapefile, you'll be able to get it. You'll be able to get it into Tableau.
Paul, one thing that's kind of cool here too is like if you have geospatial data coming from a bunch of places like Esri and other stuff, you can point it all to Mapbox and then use the Mapbox map to be kind of the layer that has some of those things in it. Now you lose some of the interactivity in it, but if the whole goal is just like I got data, like geospatial data from a bunch of sources, Mapbox can be helpful there too. So it just depends on if it's Esri and other things that Tableau doesn't natively connect to. Mapbox can be a good landing space for it.
All right, great question. Do we have anything else, or do we want to go to the do we want to select a winner? I don't know where I am on time. Do we want to select an upcoming winner for another special giveaway we're going to do?
Any more questions? Any final questions? Paul, this has been fun, man.
Yeah, you know me. I love talking Tableau. I still love learning the product. It's evolving. It used to be pretty easy. We had one major release every year. We go to conference. They'd give us all the new tools, and we'd walk away happy. And now it's every quarter, and it takes a little bit of effort to keep up with it, but it's still a lot of fun. And I still love using Tableau. Um, every chance I get.
Paul, is there, when it comes to the mapping and the layers and so forth, I'm curious if there are any client stories you could share generically, to protect the innocent. But have you seen some of the clients out in the wild using this, and any particular types of analyses that they're using it for? I mean, you've got kind of a site selection here, but
Absolutely. And the biggest one, anyone that has any type of issue or has any dealings with supply chain is absolutely critical, because people want to understand, um, want to have a spatial knowledge of where the bottlenecks are. If you have unfinished goods that have to be then transported to another location, if there's a bottleneck at a particular plant. I'll give you something else too. One of the things that I'm really passionate about is safety. Everyone has and obtains safety data, and centered around workers' compensation. And so it's really imperative that you can, if you have multiple plants across across the country, that you're able to monitor what safety issues you may be having in one specific location. It might be because you're in the Northeast and it's colder in the Northeast, and so when it snows, people are tripping on or slipping on things. But that's another area, obviously, in this era of COVID. People want to know where the outbreaks are, and I think where I've seen it most recently is identifying what counties are having difficulties with COVID, or increased COVID cases. So those are probably three right off the bat that I can mention that I've seen firsthand.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Paul, you touched on the COVID analysis, and that kind of speaks to one more question that we have time for here is, Patrick is asking about how do you handle multiple shape files that cannot be related? And what I think about is kind of what you were talking about, the level of detail. And the reason I talk about COVID is, you had COVID data for all sorts of geographies. Some of it was zip code, some of it was county, some of it was like, like the congressional block states, like, when you've got those types of things. Just real quick, I think that's what you were showing is a great example of how to do that.
That exactly, and that's really the groundbreaking portion of this. There is no limit to the number of map layers that you can use. I now have seen hundreds, but I have seen upwards of the teens, and it works effortlessly, and it really does allow you to bring in different levels of granularity based on location. A lot of people use Google Analytics, which makes use of MSAs, which are where the metropolitan statistical areas are located, and that's always been an issue. Well, I've got state data, I've got county data, I've got zip code data. How do I mash that up against MSA data, which I'm collecting from Google? And so this effortlessly puts all those layers on a map for you.
And Patrick followed up on the question. He's saying, but they have to be the same data source, right? And I think that the answer to that is that they can be in separate shape files, and it kind of, to your point, effortlessly blends them. But you tell me that.
Yeah, if you'll notice here on all of these are from, although they're either CSV files or text files or Excel files. These are 4 different data sources here.
Perfect.
It's not all in one, not located all in one area.
Yeah. And if, again, can you confirm that if some of those were shape files and then some of them were CSVs, that would still work the same?
I think that they would. I tell you what, please feel free to share my, you can reach me at plisborg@salesforce.com. And if you have, we can follow up. I can take a look for you, but I believe it should work, without any issues.
Awesome. And Paul, there are a couple more questions for you in the chat, but I think we're going to continue to plow forward. Really appreciate this presentation and the conversation. This has been awesome.